Welcome, everybody. So great to have you here. It's great to have Chief Roger William here for our Indigenous Resources Network webinar, our first one. My name is Ann Pernick, and I run the BEN network at Forest Ethics, and BEN has been working on this Indigenous Resources Network project with the Indigenous Environmental Network, and we're excited to get you more information about that soon. But this is our first webinar as part of the network, and we're so excited to have you all here, and again, very excited to have Chief Roger William here. And Chief Roger has been, coaching me on my pronunciation, so bear with me on that. Chief Roger William of the Xeni Gwet'in, the Tsilhqot'in People of Nemiah, has been working on this fight for more than half of his life, before it was the court case, and then as the plaintiff in the winning court case that has such huge impact and meaning for the Xeni Gwet'in, the Tsilhqot'in, First Nations throughout Canada, and Indigenous peoples throughout the world. He is also a former bull rider, which seems fitting in terms of of hanging on through a very difficult battle. And it is our pleasure to have him as our first webinar presenter for the Indigenous Resources Network. And with that, I'm going to let Chief William begin. We have a few slides to show you to help support what he's saying, and I'll be trying to move around to the right place. Some beautiful pictures, some helpful maps, some great graphics from the work. And with that, I will let Chief Roger get us going.
It's an honor. Thank you, and welcome everyone on this webinar. This case, this whole process, I always like to start with Tsihqut'in word, and this Tsihqut'in word is a Xeni. A Xeni is a Tsilhqot'in person at 1862. This individual had jurisdiction, who had honor, culture, language, and when he took you in their home, it was like your home. So all this, from there, since then, talk about the impacts, the changes to this Xeni person. 1862, the smallpox were 80 to 90% of our people were decimated. In some of the areas in the Tsihqut'in, almost 100%. In some areas, maybe 20% were impacted. But the overall average is a huge impact. And then we get into that Tsihqut'in war. Here is Xeni as our warrior chief. He's one of 6 Tsihqut'in warriors who led this Tsihqut'in war. There's a lot of history and stories about this situation, what happened. But in short, this war began because of mistreatment of our people, another threat of smallpox. And then this is at the time of the gold rush, where they wanted to build a road from the coast into the Tsihqut'in territory through the Butte Inlet. So there's a lot of histories and stories about that itself. Then we're moving on into later 1800s, early 1900s, where the government created reserves for First Nations, and then the residential school. Those two stories, there's a lot of history and impacts from that. Moving forward, our people, our elders, Xeni Gwet'in is one of 6 Tsihqut'in communities. Just north of us is Ceded, Alexis Creek, Indian Van, and then just east of us is Xeni, and that's the Stone First Nations Tsihqut'in community. Across from Stone First Nation is Tsilhqot'in Anaheim Reserve. We're the largest Tsihqut'in community. Then we go further towards east towards Fraser River. Fraser River, we say Tsilhqot'in in our language, and Tsilhqot'in, Tusi Indian band is the next community, and then the last community is Estela, which is the most eastern north of Tsilhqot'in on Fraser River, Tsilhqot'in. So those are the 6 Tsilhqot'in communities, and from there, a lot of our families are in each of those communities. Other Tsilhqot'in families are in Xeni Gwet'in community. So there's a lot of communications between families and leaders, and how they see the impact of harvesting timber was coming to Xeni. In 1989, August 23, our elders and our members put together what we call the Nemiah Valley Aboriginal Preserve Declaration, which had concerns and issues with commercial logging, didn't agree with commercial logging, commercial mining, commercial road building, the flooding, the BC Hydro Reserve Dam, where if this went ahead, the whole Xeni Gwet'in, the Nemiah Valley would have been underwater. So these are some of the struggles and concerns our elders had and put forward this declaration. So on the declaration, you have the English side and the Tsilhqot'in written side. And it's got a map of the Xeni Gwet'in caretaker area, which is inside the Tsilhqot'in. And in the map, we have the caretaker area of Xeni, the boundary, and then the green area, the inside the boundaries, what we call the Aboriginal Preserve. And during that time in 1989, that area had no harvesting at all. So that was the direction to the leadership of Xeni, chief and council. From here forward, you follow this declaration, so that in short, in the Xeni Gwet'in caretaker inside the Tsihqut'in, nothing happens without Xeni Gwet'in being involved. So that was in 1989. 1990, we filed a trapline case, and then in 1991, a year later, there was an out-of-court settlement with the timber company and Carrier Lumber, and that company wanted to go inside what is known into our language, Tsilhqot'in. It's between the 2 rivers, the Tsilhqot'in Lake, 80 kilometers long, Tsilhqot'in, and then the Tsihqut'in Lakes, Tsihqut'in, which is about 60 kilometers long. The 2 rivers meet, creating that Tsilhqot'in River, and also known as the Brittany Triangle. So they wanted to harvest 1.8 million cubic meters of timber during that time to deal with the beetle impact. Our people didn't agree. We had a roadblock, started May 7th, 92, and from there, that roadblock came down when we agreed to do a forest management plan known as the Brittany Lake Forest Management, where 1.8 million cubic meters of lodgepole pine beetle timber, we knocked it down to 1.1, and to protect our watershed, migration routes, our heritage and cultural site. And the plan was the only way the road can get into the Brittany Triangle was crossing the river. We were going to man the bridge so that people can't bring their guns in to hunt on the roads, on the logging roads in the Brittany Triangle. The only way to get in there today is by horseback, by wagon, by the river, or on foot. So, we wanted to make sure that stayed that way. You cannot use a vehicle on the road to hunt. In the end, our people didn't agree. Ministry of Forest decided to put a road on the north end of our trap line, and we had another roadblock. And that agreement was to do a further study when that roadblock came down. In the end, that study never did happen. The government wanted to do the study, interview our people, and we didn't agree. We said, we'll do the study and we'll give you the report. So that didn't happen. During this time, there's an area set aside for 20 years previous to 1990, and that's called the deferred pattern area between the southern portion of Chalco and Tsihqut'in lakes, and they didn't allow any logging or harvesting, but they allowed some mining exploration. They want to do a land use plan, and from our declaration, they involved us. Xeni Gwet'in was one of the co-chairs, along with BC Parks and Mines. Between 1990 to 93, we did a land use plan, and out of that came the Tsilhqot'in Parks, which the agreement, MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, with then the NDP Premier Harcourt, and just because our people had concerns of setting out an area for a park and that they couldn't hunt or trap or do any traditional activities there, that MOU agreement was to continue to assure that we practice our traditional use on the Tsilhqot'in land in the Tsilhqot'in Parks area. Tsilhqot'in is a mountain, it's a legend mountain. There's a history about him and a sacred mountain, so that's what the park was named after. The other portion was the land use, it's called the Tsihqut'in Management Zone, which would allow a bit of harvesting and mining explorations, but at the end of the day, we couldn't come to an agreement, so that fell apart. In the early 90s, Tsilhqot'in Fish Lake, there was also a company, Tsihqut'in Mines Limited. They were an exploration company at the time. They found a large deposit of gold and copper at Tsilhqot'in, and we were really concerned about how that was going to be extracted, how they're going to get that gold and copper. So we were engaged right at the beginning. Our concerns were put forward. So 1990s process to the end of 90s, we were involved with Tsihqut'in Mines Limited, involved in our nation. From there, the company pulled out in the late 90s when our nation approved Xeni Gwet'in to be involved in environmental assessment, 97, 98. That didn't go ahead. So just give me an idea of what was going on throughout this whole process. In 1998, when the Ministry of Forest informed us that they're going to go ahead with the Brittany Lake Forest Management Plan with or without our approval, we ended up filing a 1998 Aboriginal title case. We amalgamated the Brittany Triangle with the Xeni Gwet'in Trapline case, the 1990 case, and this rights and title case went to Supreme Court of BC between 2002 to 2007. We had about 29 elders from not only the Xeni Gwet'in but throughout the whole Tsihqut'in territory testify. We had about 24 expert witnesses. The decision came down in November 2007, and a decision where Judge Vickers ruled that there's 100% rights to the court case area to hunt, to trap, and to trade. And on top of all this is also to catch and use wild horses. So that was a huge victory where we proved rights to an area, to a land. There's no confusion of whose First Nations rights it is. So that was clear. In terms of title, Vickers said that we proved almost 50% title, but he didn't grant any declaration of title, and wanted to hear more evidence and arguments before he did that. So that was that decision, and then in 2010 we ended up appealing. So before that there was negotiations with BC and Canada, which didn't materialize, and out of that there was a BC process called Strategic Engagement Agreement, a consultation agreement we negotiated in 2009, where through the TNG portal, mapping portal, BC would send their referrals through that process where we had staff at the nation level helping each community, excluding the court case area, but inside the Tsilhqot'in territory. And that agreement is called the Tsilhqot'in Framework Agreement, now called the Tsilhqot'in Stewardship Agreement. So that's still there today. So in 2010, the appeal went ahead. 3 judges heard the appeal in November 2010. Decision came down in June 2012. Where the Aboriginal rights remain, that was a victory. But in terms of title, the decision was for us to go back and go after small spot postage damage style. So we didn't agree, and we filed to Supreme Court of Canada. Deadline was September 2012. BC didn't put appeal forward, meaning that the Declaration of Rights to 100% of the area became the law in September 2012 forward. So that was great. And then the appeal to Supreme Court of Canada hearing was on November 7th, 2013. And then the decision came down June 26, 2014, last year, and that was huge. Just thinking of what happened throughout all that, that Tsihqut'in Mines Limited in early 2000 got back involved on Fish Lake. They became a mining company. They bought Gibraltar Mine, and they had an agreement with us in 2006 to 2008 to what we call creating a picture. We said do a joint panel hearing process between federal and provincial, and this picture was to look at the type of footprint would be put on Peloton B, and what kind of leaks, what kind of benefits. But in the end, Tsihqut'in wanted to make changes to the joint panel hearing process, which we didn't agree. And BC pulled out because they thought we were too far apart with the company. So then BC did its own assessment. In 2010, they approved the Prosperity Mine, and we went with the federal Canadian Environmental Assessment. So the 2010 panel hearing and the report and the federal decision turned down the proposed mine. At that time, they were going to drain the lake, and for 20 years, the mine was going to go ahead. The lake was going to be drained and replaced with a bigger lake and more fish. That was the plan. And when the decision came down from the federal government, turned it down, but they left the door open. And in 2013 was the second panel hearing. This first time in Canada that environmental assessment was done on the same project, same area. And this time they went with their next option, which was to save Fish Lake. So here's a lake that's going to be between the pit, the open pit mine, which is about 2 kilometers in diameter, wide, and then above Fish Lake is the tailings pond, and they were going to save the lake, and we were against that. So there was a lot of support, not only in the Fish Lake, but in the court case. We have First Nations across Canada, across BC, Union of BC Indian Chiefs, BCAFN, BC First Nations Summit, the Assembly of First Nations across Canada. We have Friends of the Nemiah Valley, Woodward and Company, Rosenberg, David Suzuki Foundation, the NAN Foundation, Western Canada Wilderness Committee. There's a lot of people, Council of Canadians, Mining Watch Canada, we're all involved. So in the end, 2013, 2010, we were able to stop the new Prosperity Mine. It's still alive today. Judicial review against the company, filed a judicial review against Canada on the panel hearing and the report, and also on the federal decision. In October 2013, they filed to do a full trial, moving away from the judicial review. But that was turned down just in March. But it's still there. We're still dealing with that. We've been planning throughout this whole 25 years. We've been doing ecosystem-based planning, telco and community resorts, local operators in our area that have history with our people, with my uncles, with my aunts, grandparents. Some of these operators have been there 2, 3, 4 generations. They are in that in our area because they left the place. When the decision came down, 1,750 square kilometers of tidal land, there were a lot of operators that were inside. So these operators have private land, leased land, which we didn't file in court. In history, they had to get license and permits from the Crown government. Now they're in tidal land, meaning they need Tsihqut'in approval. So we have bridging agreements. We want a smooth transition. We have good history with a lot of these operators. And this transition, we agreed to have BC collect fees to allow what we call these guiding another year for guide outfitters to continue to allow that there's a part of the tidal land is also inside the Tsilhqot'in parks. So BC parks to continue. So we have our parks rangers, or Xeni Gwet'in is co-managers with the parks rangers. The BC parks, we have meetings every month. And then the campsites, the parks campsite, the recreational campsites, where Xeni Gwet'in for the last 10 years has been had contracts and managing those. So now under the Tsilhqot'in Nation government with BC, will continue that. So these are some of the things we're doing now. As of September 10, 2014, we signed a letter of agreement with BC to map up a negotiations process. And I was just talking about tidal lands. We're looking at the bigger picture. There's other 5 Tsihqut'in communities, and this tidal area is about 10% of the Tsihqut'in territory. We want to be able to make decisions to the whole Tsihqut'in territory, to be involved in decision making, to be able to get the revenues from the whole Tsihqut'in territory. But we also need to catch up. A Saidan Tsihqut'in person at 1862 has been impacted. We want to get close to being a Saidan again. So we have a lot of our Tsihqut'in members who speak the language, are out on the land, who have university and college degrees. We want to be able to use them to get our people caught up in terms of economic development, culture, language, being on the land, and also in our communities we need to get our housing, our education, our health, our economic development going, to, get all that going and started. So that's sort of what we mapped out. March of this year was the end of the 6-month agreement LOU with BC, and we extend that to another 3 months. So we're looking at June 26 to sign what we call a 3 to 5 year negotiations process. And with that, within the 3 months, we want to be able to really start dealing with tidal land, start moving forward. We want to make a situation for local operators, non-First Nations, and on tidal land to be improved, to involve our people. So, in short, that's a quick history of the court case.
Great, Chief Roger. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me show just a couple more slides and tell us a little bit about what's in them, and then I have a couple questions for you, and we'll open up for Q&A. Can you tell us what we're seeing in these photos?
These photos on the left is the Nemiah Valley Rodeo and Mountain Race, and we've been having our mountain races since the 70s, and once a year we have a lot of our members who chase wild horses and catch them and train them. So once a year we get them to show off their skills. You come down the side of a mountain and it's pretty rocky, and then you go into an open area into the trail that has dips and mud, and then you go through the Nemiah River, you go through the Beaver Dam and into the rodeo grounds. So it's just like chasing horses. Wild horses will do anything to escape you. But that's an event that we do. But the rodeo, like bull riding, calf whooping, bear racing, junior and senior events. But that happens on the BC Day long weekend every year. And on the bottom right, the Tsilhqot'in Tsihqut'in, that's the 80-kilometer lake, 10-kilometer wide. So, and that island there we call Tsilhqot'in. That's inside at the time Telos Parks, Tsilhqot'in campsite. There's a traditional camp where we developed a pit house, earth lodge, and we put that together as a tourism, something in tourism that we want to start.
Great. And then this slide has pictures of wild horses, a picture from the rodeo, and then something, I think, the Brittany Gathering. Is that right?
Yeah, it's some of the events we do. We have our Brittany Gatherings, which happens in May, June, or September. And the Brittany Gathering started in '93, and that's because we had a roadblock, 2-month roadblock on May 7th, '92. And every year we thank all the Tsihqut'in leaders, elders, and members who helped us in the roadblock, the local non-First Nations. We also had from North Algacho, mixed Southern Carrier and Tsilhqot'ins that helped us roadblock. So we update everyone every year what's happening with the since the roadblock, and we do traditional games, talent shows, fishing, lahal, so different games with horses as well. Then we have elders gatherings once a year, youth gatherings, and since 7 years ago now, this will be the 7th year where one of our youth, Jimmy Lulawa, his wife June, they started, when I was young, the only way I got to the Williams Lake Stampede was Team Horse and Wagon. So we have an 8-day trip involving our elders and youth in a wagon and on horseback before the Williams Lake Stampede. And last year when the decision came down, I was on that wagon trip. I had to lead the wagon trip to go to Vancouver for the decision to come down. So things like that involving our youth and elders doing things together. Every year we do that.
Great, great. Okay, I have just a couple questions to start off the Q&A, and I see several questions that people have already submitted, so thank you for those. We're going to be calling on you in just a minute. And Chief Roger, can you talk a little bit about the decision to turn to the courts, to start to do a court case, why that seemed like the right thing? The blockades were happening, but why did it seem like the court case was the best thing to pursue next?
Well, we we got involved with the governments, some of the companies, and their policies, the legislation on how we want to deal with timber harvesting, for example, didn't fit with us, and their decisions were going ahead regardless we agreed or not. In terms of consultation, there was no real consultation. They would send us a letter and they give us 15-30 days to respond, and when we did respond, they would go ahead anyways. So we have no choice. We've had a lot of meetings through our General Assemblies, through the Nation Assemblies, meeting with the different companies, meeting with Ministry of Forest, but with business, we're still going ahead. They didn't agree with some of the areas. We didn't want, they didn't agree with the 1989 declaration, the Nemiah Valley Aboriginal Preserve. They didn't want to follow it. So, direction from our elders and people to the leaders was to assure that we're involved in everything, that there's no commercial logging, mining. That being said, governments and companies were moving ahead as planned, so we had no choice but to roadblock and put the trial forward.
On the court case, your name is on the case. You're the plaintiff, okay. Yeah, and you represent not just the Xeni Gwet'in, but the entire Tsilhqot'in people. Is that right?
Yes.
And what was the process to make sure that you had the support of all of the different bands?
Well, this was a huge one. In any case, Xeni Gwet'in, I always think of the 1864 Tsilhqot'in War. That story is told to every child that's born. That's the first thing they know, they learn. And that, to me, that war kept the 6 Tsihqut'in communities together. And that was a big plus for us. But through our lawyers, Jack Woodward and Company, we looked at all types of cases and how do we move forward with title. We met with each, at the Tsilhqot'in national government level, the chiefs meeting. Then we went to each of the Tsilhqot'in communities. We had a video made, and we had elders speaking in Tsilhqot'in why we need to go ahead with this court case. And once we did that, the Tsihqut'in leaders, the elders, each of the Tsihqut'in community agreed that there was a lot of questions and concerns. Thinking maybe we should take the whole Tsihqut'in territory to court. But through decisions from the Delgamuk, from the Coulter and other court cases, with our lawyers' involvement and the research, the best route was to find an area that's exclusive to Tsihqut'in. It's pristine and a lot of culture and history there, and put that forward. So based on that, the leaders and elders and members of the Tsihqut'in agreed to go ahead with this court case. At the time I was chief, but I'm a Tsihqut'in member from Xeni, and what we said that I'll put this forward on behalf of everyone, and that if any of the communities or any member don't agree with what we're doing, they can take us to court or they can stop us. So that was sort of the agreement that we went ahead. There was a BCR signed by the chiefs to move ahead with this case.
Great. And I have just one more question now, and then I'll bring in some other people. The decision to appeal the first court decision was, I was reading, was a difficult one for you because I think you were worried that you might lose more than you would gain through the appeals process. Can you talk about why that decision was difficult?
Well, on one hand, in terms of the rights, that was huge, 100% rights. in terms of title, this being 10% of the Tsilhqot'in territory, and we approved 50%, it was a tough one because a decision was strong. First time ever that any trial judge in this country gave 100% rights, and to meet the tests of title to almost 50%, that's huge. For our people, for our elders, not only in Xeni but throughout the Tsihqut'in, through meetings, through gatherings, it was felt that we had 100% title, and that the declaration wasn't given. We tried to negotiate with BC and Canada, and we got nowhere. So one hand, we sort of had no choice. The other hand, if we didn't do anything, they were going to go ahead with their plan anyways. So that's sort of where we had to, it was one of those situations where it was damn if you do or damn if you don't.
But it worked out very well.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Let me bring in some more questions. So so folks, I will call on you, and I'll try to unmute your line. And then if for some reason we're having trouble hearing you, I'll go ahead and ask the question on your behalf. So let's see. Our first question that we have is from Jasper. So I'm scrolling down here. We have such a nice number of people on the line here. Here's Jasper. I'm going to try to unmute your line. Hi, Jasper. Can you hear us? Oh, Jasper, can you hear us? Okay. I can't hear Jasper, so I'm going to ask the question. Jasper wrote, does the nation have a green energy technology usage plan for, wow, this is very specific, for clean energy cooking?
Oh, no, not for green energy cooking, but we've been doing ecosystem-based planning, land use planning, what we call access planning, and we're looking at that for any timber use. We're looking at wood added value, so that's still something that we're looking at. But cooking in Xeni, we have our we built a community kitchen, and we just had recently, January till April, May, where we had camp cooks training, and we had about 16, 17 graduate from there. So we're doing things like that. But green energy in Xeni, we have no BC Hydro. Our people, BC Hydro, try to come in 2 or 3 times, and our people turn it down. We're working on green energy. We're looking at a mini hydro. We're looking at what we call windmill solar panels. Well, we've been doing that for 15, 20 years, and we're still working on it today.
Great. We have a question from John. And John, you emailed a question over the weekend. You have another question here. I'm going to try to unmute your line and go ahead and ask maybe just one of them now, and we'll try to get to another one in a bit. So John, are you able to hear us?
I can hear you.
We can hear you too.
Shall I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Chief Williams, so much, and Anne for facilitating. And I want to send greetings to all Tsilhqot'in elders from Connecticut.
Oh, thank you. An honor.
My question, and you have the first one, but let me read the one I put up here, because I strongly agree with First Nation self-determination regarding development. And I wondered if you could say a word more about what distinguishes First Nation development from outside or non-native development, logging, mining, and so forth.
Well, I think, First Nations developer would be coming from its elders, its youth. In this proposed mine on prosperity, a lot of directions came from them, and they had a lot of concerns of our watershed, concerns of our fish, the grizzlies, our culture, the sacred sites. So knowing all that, in any proposed log in our mining, need to consider all that. We don't log, we don't mine, but if we can sit down with industry and work out a plan that's going to, look at the environment and the culture, the land, the wildlife as being sensitive. So from there, I think, depending how the process goes, and I think I can only say that from that process we can see how things go.
Great. We have a question from my colleague Sven. Let me see if I can get Sven on the line here. Sven, can you hear us?
Hello?
Hey, we can hear you too.
I think the question is from everyone in the Vancouver staff, and Karen wrote it. So what she wrote is, Chief William, you mentioned that currently you have title over 10% of the territory. What does this case mean for the other 90%, in particular the Fish Lake area, and do you have plans to pursue title over that area going forward?
Well, right now, we're in negotiations with BC. We're still working on getting Canada to the table. We've met Canada several times. We're hoping to negotiate the whole Tsihqut'in territory with the provincial and federal government. And in that process, we're looking at Tsilhqot'in B, which is in the declaration rights area, and other areas, some areas that we would consider no-go zones, and some areas that would be open for development. And that through the Tsihqut'in Stewardship Agreement, the consultation agreement we signed with BC back in 2009. Together with that, and sit down with BC, we're hoping to negotiate and come up with a process that's going to work for all of us.
Great, and let's go through a couple more questions here. Let me ask, is that just the Vancouver office? Are you feeling, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, we did. Thanks, Chief William. This is so fantastic. We're to the Forest Ethics Office in Vancouver. I know that, of course, lots of people are speculating about what this case means for other nations in the province, but I would really be interested to hear just your own personal opinion about what you think this means, looking forward. What do you think the implications are for other nations?
Well, this case is huge, first of its kind. We can say that our First Nation in this country has won 100% Aboriginal rights to an area that they declared, and won almost 50% title. From that, moving forward, the gate is open. There is Aboriginal title in this country, North America. Internationally, there's a title. Now we have an opportunity with BC and Canada to negotiate how we can move forward. We know the history, we know where we've been, and now we want to move forward from that past and looking at this positively. So whatever we negotiate, governments being in good faith, moving forward, this could be a template for Aboriginal people in this country. And we're looking at the whole Tsilhqot'in territory. We're thinking that some situations, some areas we could negotiate fairly quickly. Some areas going to take longer. But we're looking at being involved in decision making throughout the whole Tsilhqot'in territory. We want to be able to get some revenues from all the Tsilhqot'in territory. What that looks like as we move forward, I can't say, because we're negotiating that. But the first thing is that we need to get caught up, in terms of our health, our culture. We have alcohol, drugs, gangs in the Tsilhqot'in. These are the things that are outstanding. And moving forward with economic development, healing, self-governance, working with BC and Canada and different individuals, proponents, and industry. I think that's it's an opportunity to be had for all of us. There are First Nations agreements throughout this country, throughout the province. There are economic developments. There are some First Nations who are thriving. And we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to be able to tweak it, work with them. We've been communicating. We've been doing presentations across Canada to First Nations, to non-First Nations, exchanging notes so that when we're negotiating, we're looking at the big picture, looking at ideas that already are working and trying to move forward with that.
And Chief William, related to that, have you also been getting calls or having meetings with other First Nations who are interested in pursuing title cases? It looks like there was a lot of work right after the decision by different BC First Nations to tell corporations who were doing development that they didn't want that this isn't going to work. Have you been consulting with a lot of other First Nations about your success and to share that knowledge?
Yes, we've been going through to different First Nations, right as far as east, James Bay Cree, north Yukon First Nations, to the Haida, and even to Prince Rupert, interior areas where we've been doing presentations and getting ideas, exchanging notes. We're also what we call Tsihqut'in. It's the think tank, Tsihqut'in, the triple T, Tsihqut'in think tank, where academics across Canada, we're signing an MOU with them so that they can be involved in our process in terms of negotiating. And a lot of these academics been working with First Nations, working with governments, and using them, and they are using us because they also represented their First Nations or governments on how we can move forward together.
Great. We have a question related to this, from I'm sorry if I'm not saying your name right. Is it Jay or Jai? Can you hear us? I think we can hear you.
Yes, that's fine. That's correct.
Good. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Well, firstly, Chief Roger, thank you for this fabulous presentation. I'm from India, a long way away, but I visit Canada. My wife has moved here. She's Peruvian Canadian, and in Ottawa. As I come to Canada, and I understand now, I came here 50 years ago first, and I didn't know anything about the way the country had been colonized. Now I know something about it. I see the country very differently and see, therefore, something of the historic proportions of your victory. Okay, so I'm speaking in that context.
Okay.
Especially during this present week where we have the Truth and Reconciliation Commission here in Ottawa. It seems to me the victory you have won opens up huge questions about the question of land ownership, which to me seems fundamental to the question of reconciliation. So what do you see as the implications of the ruling and of the case for the future of Canada?
I think, this is an opportunity. I said earlier that our First Nations in this country has title and has declaration of rights. An opportunity to be recognized as First People of this country in Canada. This is where the governments, industries need to involve First Nations, Aboriginal people, recognizing them, and I think investing into the First People of this country learning from our history and moving forward. I think this is, there's a lot of things like in Prince Rupert, the Tsimshian First Nations, some of the communities there were offered an agreement, and the people turned it down. They're still working on it. There's a lot of details, but when you look at the big picture, I think sitting down, moving forward, and trying to invest, because what happens is in the schools, in the justice system, in the health, a lot of our people are caught up in that, and if we invest in our people, I think they can be involved in the economics of this country and moving forward, which once education, the justice, the health starts improving, I think this province, the provinces and the territories in the country can start moving forward together.
Wonderful. I think we have time for 2 more questions. I have one from Jennifer and then from Melissa. So Jennifer, let me see if I can open up your line. I think we can hear you.
Hello?
Oh, Jennifer, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, there we go.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Chief Williams. This is such an exciting moment for BC, and I know for the Tsilhqot'in Nation and for so many First Nations in BC, but beyond. My question really has to do with a practical strategic one, which is I know you worked with the Jack Woodward and his firm in the legal case. And I'm just curious, I know legal cases are so expensive, and I'm curious about what kind of strategies your band used to mobilize the funding necessary for the successful court case and cases, and what worked, what hasn't worked, and do you still have outstanding legal fees? I mean, it seems like such a major challenge, and I'm just curious, how you've navigated that.
Yeah, that's a very good question. We've, with Woodward and Company, connect with different groups. Friends in the Nemiah Valley was created. And then we met with support from Western Canada Wilderness Committee, the David Suzuki Foundations. There's a Lannan Foundation in the U.S. It's just being able to connect, and there's a lot of groups out there. We've been fundraising in our community, in our nation, and through the different agreements on fundraising, we're able to put enough funds together to argue court case costs. We're in the court case costs, the ruling came down that 100% of preparing our witnesses, travel, meal, and lodging to Victoria for the BC trial, and then almost around 50% for the legal fees. Some of that negotiations went up to 75 to 85% being covered, but we do have about 30 million in terms of costs, and that's something that we're looking at and still working on. But other than that, I think communicating with other First Nations, we had throughout BC and throughout Canada, where we had donations from different First Nations groups, companies, proponents, First Nations and non-First Nations, like you got the Council of Canadians, different groups that we're able to connect with to help us make ends meet. And then having a good lawyer, good law firm that, we have a story where Jack Woodward even sold his house to keep the court case going. And Jack himself, we call him Click in our language, he says it's really hard to find a client that's willing to go all the way. So I think, finding a client, finding a a lawyer or a law firm that's going to go all the way. Different sacrifices that make it work.
Great, thank you. We're going to have one last question for Melissa. I think we have time just enough for that. And before I bring Melissa on, if people are interested, we may have a follow-up webinar. We're interested in trying to organize one with some of the attorneys on the case and some other attorneys working on this issue in Canada. And so we'll look forward to getting you more information about that and more information about the Indigenous Resources Network for those of you who requested that, or just send me an email if you want more information. We're just working to create opportunities like this for Indigenous leaders and activists to share knowledge and resources, and we look forward to getting you more information about that. Let me open up the line for my colleague Melissa. Hi Melissa.
Hi there. Okay, well, great. So thank you so much, Chief, for being here and sharing your story. Just to sort of close, what would you share as some key pieces of advice for any other nations who are looking to achieve something similar?
I would just say that get involved, come from the elders. For Xeni, we're one of 6 Tsihqut'in communities, so when a decision came down, it's not Xeni Gwet'in Aboriginal Rights and Title, it's Tsihqut'in Aboriginal Rights and Title. It's a nation right and title. Once you come from your elders, your youth, and getting back out on the land, do different gatherings, continue your traditional activities on your land, and those activities, land use plans. What do you do on those areas? What is the history? What are those heritage sites? What is important to you? I think once you put your plan forward, and that when there's referrals or when there's companies, governments making decisions that's going to impact your land, then you can show them what you're doing. Our economy is our traditional use, out on the land, using the land, and there are some activities, economic development that's complementary to that. I think keeping all that in mind, that would be my advice. As a Aboriginal person, you have Aboriginal rights and title as an individual. As a family, you're even stronger. As a community, you're even that much stronger. But as a nation, that much stronger. But then if you work with other First Nations across this country, the sky is the limit.
And Chief William, just a quick follow-up to that. What are some of the things that you've done to document recreational activities, economic activities, traditional activities that help strengthen your case? Were photographs? Did you have Word documents? What kinds of things should people be gathering together to show how they're using their territories?
We've been doing traditional use study, like where did you hunt? When did you hunt? What about medicine gathering? Where's your heritage sites? What do you do today? What did you do in history? And getting that information, when you get that information from your elders, it's very important. Like things like the name, the birth dates, what community, what date, what time. That's in recordings. You record it. You make sure that those individuals say their name, when they were born, where they're from, and it's documented on recording and also on paper. Those are really important. I think just every time you get a chance, elders, the 29 elders that testified today, 10 of them are gone. We had a lot of elders that weren't able to testify because of their health or because we lost them. So I think right away, right now, is engaging with your elders. Get youth and elders gatherings going where the stories are being told from the elders to the youth, so that youth also has that knowledge, so that youth can also testify in court and be out on the land and say, this is what I did on the land, medicine gathering, hunting, fishing.
Great. Chief William, thank you so much for your time today and for all of your work on this case. And we look forward to checking back in with you and getting your thoughts on how things develop for your nation and for other nations in Canada. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's my honor, and thank you for putting this on and getting our story out, because I think this is huge. This is an opportunity for all of us to move forward.
Thank you very much. Good day, everybody.